landscape. You're going to need violet, blue, black, and white on your palette. And then you're going to go ahead and get your canvas out in front of you. Paper will work. It's just going to dry up a little bit quicker. What you're going to do is just estimate about halfway down your canvas, and halfway down your canvas, you're going to go ahead and paint the top half with pure white. This is kind of a Bob Ross technique that will allow your colors that'll lay on it to not only blend smoother, but also lighter, which is perfect for our violet sky. So take a rather larger brush and just quickly lay that on. You don't want to take too much time when doing backgrounds when you're using a blended techniques because dry paint is not going to blend. So if you take your time and then you get distracted and your paint dried, you'll have to do it all over again. Mix a very light violet. Do this by mixing white and violet together until you get a very nice shade for your violet sky in the background. Using the tip of your brush, make horizontal strokes all the way across very loosely. Keep in mind I'm applying this onto white, wet paint. This would not work if my background was dry. It's very important. Now I'm going to mix a really pretty blue violet just by mixing a little bit of blue with my violet on my plate. And I'm going to do the same thing with my blue violet. I'm just going to make some horizontal swipes. I'm not covering up all of my white though. How you do this is just up to the artist, how much color you have and where. You can make your sky look different from mine. This is just a technique that'll get you started. Now you're going to use the dry brush technique. This is a clean, dry brush I am using. I'm taking off the excess as needed. I'm dragging it in horizontal strokes and I'm pressing very lightly. You don't want to press hard when you use this technique. You're going to pause the video as needed. So after you watch a technique, my video is intended to be paused so that the artist can catch up. As you can see, I have a very nice, pretty sky done rather quickly, and I might just touch it up again with a clean, dry brush. That will allow you to do that blending. If you need to practice off on the side, that is something that you can do, but really this technique is so easy, you probably won't need to do that. Just avoid making the common mistake of using too much color, too strong, too soon. Keep things nice and light. Now we're going to go ahead and do our foreground, and that means the front of our canvas. And it is just going to be kind of like an eerie blue foreground. So I'm going to take my blue and add just the smallest pinch of white to it. I don't want this to look too pastel-y, so I don't want to get too generous with my white, just enough to tone down that primary blue just a smidgen. Of course, you can use any shade of blue or violet that you would like. I am using a nice true primary blue with a little bit of white. And go ahead and take your nice thick 1-inch foam brush or 1-inch brush. Don't forget to do the sides of your canvas if you have a canvas, if you plan on not framing it. This will allow you to hang your canvas right up on the wall, and it'll look really nice because the painting will wrap all the way around the edges. If you don't want to do that, sometimes artists will also paint it all black or just frame it. So keep these strokes, again, nice and horizontal. Whenever you're doing a landscape, you do want to keep your strokes horizontal. We know the earth is round, but in real world time, it looks flat. So we want to keep our horizontal strokes. I'm keeping it darker in the back, and I did that by adding a little bit of black to my blue. And then I'm going to use that same technique. I laid down wet blue and wet dark blue. I'm taking my clean dry brush and I'm just very lightly stroking over the entire surface, back and forth, nice and long strokes going from the left side to the right side of my canvas, not stopping. I have a paper towel in my hand, and you should as well, and that is going to be used to dry off that wet paint. You are not cleaning your brush with water. If you clean your brush with water, you're going to get a soupy mess. Acrylic paint is not intended to be mixed with a lot of water. So in this case, I'm not using any water with my paint. If you do, you're going to get a very liquidy mess that's not going to absorb onto my canvas. The only exception is if you are using paper, then that might require your brush to be a little bit wet because the cotton is picking up that moisture so quickly. You need to adjust that as an artist though. But for the most part, we are not using any water. As you can see, I'm just wrapping this around my edges. And this is creating a very nice, soft, transparent background. So as you can see, you just lay the colors down that you want. Make sure that your background and the color you're applying stays wet, and you use a clean, dry brush to brush them and blend them as you would like, as desired. We're going to have a lot going on the surface, so don't get too concerned about if you don't like one particular area. Chances are you'll probably end up covering it up anyway, especially in this foreground. All right, here we go to the next step. Okay, for this next part, you are going to just get kind of this spooky, eerie forest in the background. So to do that, I just am using black paint, but I'm also doing it and pulling up upward strokes nice and thin. So you don't want to use a big paintbrush for this. You really want to use either a small flat brush with a flat square top or a really small round tip brush and just flick up. I think if I did this again, I would use more of a detail brush. I kind of think some of my strokes are a little bit thicker than I'd like, but I had the brush I had and honestly didn't want to stop the video. But just go ahead and make real quick upward movements. Don't draw these. In other words, don't keep your paintbrush firmly on the surface from start to finish. Just flick it. So you're almost, turning your wrist as I'm flicking upward. And you might want to practice that. And then I'm just going to fade the bottom of those sticks in the brush in with my background by just giving some swipes forward. If for some reason your canvas dried completely, that's okay. You can just use the wet paint that was used for the sticks and drag that down. Okay, now we're ready to do some perspective. Perspective in art can be created in a lot of different ways, but two ways is one, the use of color, where things that are lighter and that are going to be farther away are going to be the lightest, and things that are darker and clearer are closer to us. That's called atmospheric perspective. So my first layer of spooky bare trees is going to be pastel violet. So I'm mixing white with a little bit of violet. This is going to be my lightest area or my lightest layer, and these trees are going to be the farthest away. So imagine, you're driving in a car, things that are really far down the road are really blurry. You can't see them yet, but that stop sign is bright red and you can clearly see the crispness of the letters. That's called atmospheric perspective, and we can use that even when we're doing an abstract painting like this one. So go ahead and draw some spooky trees using that really light violet color. You can draw trees however you want. You are going to want to use a nice small detail brush for this. And a good tip on drawing trees is just to start off by drawing a line and then turning it into a crooked Y. So think of drawing the letter Y over and over again. So you can see that abstract Y in there. And then I draw more Ys off of that. And then I just kind of have fun with whatever I think. If you want to do this more accurately, you could use reference pictures of trees. You might also want to pause this video if you're having a hard time and go to find on YouTube how to draw trees. I would love to do a video for you. If I have enough people comment below that they need help on drawing trees, I could do an extra video for you, but I bet there's already some really good ones out there. The next step you're going to do is the next layer of trees. These trees are coming closer, so I'm going to add a little bit more violet to thy same color. And this time I'm going to draw them better than I did my first layer. So these ones you really are going to be seeing more. So it's kind of nice. We got to practice with our background trees. Again, just draw the Y, keep drawing the Y, make sure that this color is darker. I'm already getting really neat layering. So this is layering in painting, and it's so fun because you don't need to draw first. You know, you're kind of just drawing with your paint. So consider we did our sky first, and then we did our abstract ground, and then I did the brush in the background, and then I did the light trees, and now I'm moving forward with darker trees. This is layering and painting, and what that's creating is depth. Depth is showing that there's space and distance, just like there is in nature and outside and all around us. So we are creating this by changing up our value of violet and by layering our colors. You can add as many or as few trees as you want. Don't forget to allow overlap. A lot of time in beginning artists, what I will see happening is they don't want to let things overlap. They want to keep one tree spaced out perfectly from another tree, and they don't want their branches crossing. But just take a quick look outside for a minute. Even pause the video, and if you have trees outside, and just pause and look at nature. Things are overlapping all over the place in that tree because a tree is not flat. A tree is in a sphere shape at the top and a cylinder on the trunk. That means it has depth. And we need to create that by allowing our trees to overlap. All right, once you have some nice buildup of background trees, remember to keep this spooky. We don't want these looking too cute here. So, you know, leaves are kind of comforting. So we're going to leave our leaves off and go ahead and let your canvas dry completely. This should take between 5 and 10 minutes. You could also put it in front of a hair dryer if you really want to quicken things up. All right, while that is drying, set that aside. Let's go ahead and practice drawing pumpkins. So get out a piece of paper and a good old pencil, and I'm gonna show you how to draw a pumpkin. So what you're going to do to draw a pumpkin is to draw a circle or an oval. A good thing to do first is to make your crossbars. Decide on the length and the width that you want your pumpkin, whether that's circular or oval, tall or short. I'm kind of doing a circular shaped pumpkin. Then what you're going to do is just go ahead and then use those crossbars as a guide to draw your circular or oval shape. What's great about a pumpkin, it doesn't need to be perfect because they're a little bumpy on the edges. And use that as a guide to draw your pumpkin. Then draw a curved bottom about a third of the way in, and go ahead and draw on your stem. I'm going very quickly. Don't expect you to keep up with me. To be doing this well, you should be stopping the video in between however often you need to. Now let's draw the lines. The lines of the pumpkin are really the crown of the pumpkin to really make it look good. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and curve those lines of the pumpkin. In the middle, you'll see there's almost like it's curved to the left and to the right for the first one, and then start curving them all the way to the right and all the way to the left. Make sure you're going up your pumpkin and you're not trying to go down to the center of the pumpkin with your curves. Keep them wrapped around the middle of the stem. You can even put a dot right there in the middle of the stem if you really wanted to. And that is all there is to making a pumpkin look 3D. It's so easy. I don't know why people bother drawing a circle with straight sticks down, because this is so simple. This is the advantage of art classes. You can draw better. And then to make it really look like it's going into my pumpkin, I'm just going ahead and putting the rinds on the bottom. And I'm using my pumpkin sections to do that. So just kind of fold them over. And then I'm going to draw some curved lines down just to get started, just as a guide for my paint. And that's how you're going to draw your pumpkins. That's all there is to it. Draw a circle, draw your curved lines. You know, put it in a 3D husk, and that's it. It's really all there is to it. Super fun. You can practice this. There's a lot of different ways to draw pumpkins. If you don't like mine, not offended, you can just go to YouTube, and if you just type in how to draw a pumpkin, you can find all kinds of different pumpkins. And you are more than welcome on this project to put in a jack-o'-lantern face. You can do whatever you want. That's what makes art fun, is you doing your own thing. So I'm giving you a guide for this painting, but I love seeing the different things that you will come up with to make it different. You'll notice in this painting there's overlapping, and overlapping in art is very important because overlapping happens in the real world. So to make your work look more realistic, you need to get used to this. So I'm pretending that pumpkin's not there, and to do a small pumpkin in front, I'm going to draw my crossbars again and draw my circle around it. Make sure you don't have points at the ends of those crossbars. Remember, a circle is round all the way around, all 360 degrees of it. There's no point where it's sharper edge. So make sure that you're sketching nice and round around those end points there. Okay, so this is the pumpkin arrangement that I used, and you're going to go ahead and draw this onto your dry canvas with your pencil. So just follow that same technique, and you'll finish up that small pumpkin the same way you did the larger pumpkin. You can, of course, change things. You can make a different arrangement. You can make a jack-o'-lantern face if you would like. You do you, and you change it up a little bit. Okay? All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do our final layer on our background, which is our black trees. These trees are going to look the creepiest, and they're going to want to be drawn with a very thin paintbrush. So get your black paint out and your small detail brush. You really need a good detail brush for this, and you really need to make sure you're using just the tip of your brush and that you're really being careful and trying to draw a really good tree. If you haven't got good at trees yet and you don't like these trees you already have in the background, I suggest getting a piece of paper and practicing using this black paint and drawing trees, because this final layer in black are the trees that the viewer and you are really going to be seeing. But again, just go ahead and draw a crooked Y and just keep drawing crooked Ys. It's important to lift up on your paintbrush though, so you're using just the tip as you get towards the end of your branches, because branches are thicker and they usually get thinner and thinner, and same with the trunk. So if you really look at a tree, for the most part, it's going to be thicker at the base and things get narrower, and that's constantly happening in a tree. So just put trees wherever you want. You do want to overlap your background, so don't be afraid to paint over a tree that you already did, but you don't want it to be so much that you're covering up all that good work that you did. So just kind of be cautious of that. These trees should be not only the darkest, showing that they're in the front, but they should be the tallest and the biggest, because they're really up close to you. Something I kind of like to do too is, if you look how I just kind of flicked off a lost branch down there, that actually looks kind of cool too, and it kind of adds to that eerie feeling that we're trying to recreate. As you're painting, do keep in mind that you could have a win or a win-win when you paint. A win to me is just that you enjoyed it, but you didn't necessarily like what you did. A win-win is that you like what you did and you enjoyed creating. So if all you're doing is enjoying yourself, even if you don't love what you're doing, although I'm sure it's fantastic, don't let that upset you. We are going to go ahead now and move on to painting our pumpkin though. So what you're going to do is you should have already drawn the pumpkin on your canvas. I did add with my black, as you can see, some weird grass underbrush in black. So I just did that by making little stick movements at the base of my pumpkin drawing first. So I would pause the video right now and go ahead and finish that up. I also splashed on a little bit of white, as you can see. So I just did some highlights with strong white, just kind of splattered it on there. So you could do that as well. Now what I'm doing, because my dark ground is so dark, I'm going to go ahead and lay down orange just for my base. I'm going to paint this on both my pumpkins. I'm going to take my trunk and give it a base coat too, probably a beige or white, and I'm just going to let it dry so that my final orange will actually really punch out and that the background won't be so transparent on my final painting. I am just using a basic orange. This particular orange is from Apple Barrel and it's called Apricot. I found these and get most of my paint at Walmart because it's the cheapest place to buy them. They're only 50 cents for a small container, a 2 fluid ounce, and you can get the exact colors. But you can mix this too. So you can just mix this by, if you mix red and yellow to make orange, you can then adjust the orange by adding more or less yellow or red until you like it. That's something you could do too. You could also take the complementary color of orange, which is blue, and add a small dot of it, and that'll give you different values of orange as well. If you're in my high school class, we just did a lot of color mixing. So you could be playful high school artist and the color of orange that you mix if you would like. Hi artists, so unfortunately my video cut off while I was finishing painting the pumpkins. Bummer, hate when that happens. So hopefully this isn't gonna be too horrible. I don't have my normal video set up, so it's not ideal, but I hope it gets you through. So what I did is on my palette, you are going to need to grab 2 different shades of orange. Really the 2 different shades isn't that important, but you do want 2 different values of orange. You could create them your own by adding more yellow or red to orange to change the color if you only have one at home. I am using Apple Barrel Apricot and Jack-o'-lantern, of course. I'm using Jack-o'-lantern. So I have these 2 different values. I also have on my palette, it's called Territorial Beige. Where do they get these names? Territorial Beige for my trunk of my pumpkin. And I also have white, of course, for accents. So how are you going to do it? I did draw here a pumpkin that should look a lot like the pumpkin that you are going to be painting. So the first thing is, it's really pretty easy. You're just going to start with the darker shade of orange on the outside, and then you're going to put the lighter shade of orange on the interior, and then flip it on this side. Just lay down the darker, and then the lighter, the darker, and then the lighter orange. That's going to create form in your piece. So what that's going to look like is, I'm going to hold it up for you. Just give me half a sec. I know this is horrible. So I'm just going to go ahead then. And I have outlined it in orange. And then I'm going to fill it in with my lighter color. And then I'll show you how to blend those 2 in just a hot second. So I have outlined it in my darker paint of orange, and I filled it in with lighter. Now this is cool because how do you blend paint? So first of all, you cannot blend paint when it's dry. You can apply a dry brushing technique, but it's not going to blend. That is the advantage of a canvas for artists, is that canvas is not going to absorb your paint, that water out of your paint, like a paper would. So paper is going to have a cotton base to it. So that is going to absorb all that moisture really quickly. It won't give you as much time. Now I'm doing mine on paper and it's not too bad, but I don't want to talk to you too long. So what you're going to do here is go ahead, and I have a dry brush. It has to be dry. And you just go in the direction of your pumpkin and you barely touch it. And that's it. See how nice and blended that is? So that will give you value in art. You're going to do that each time. You're going to start on the outside. And when you're doing your outside edges, you want to have the right brush. So notice when I'm outlining, I'm using a smaller round tip brush. And then when I fill in and I blend it, I'm going to use more of a dry, thicker brush. Okay. So go ahead and do that all the way around the entire pumpkin. I am going to go ahead and do that and pause the video, and then I will come back. Okay, so I have completed my pumpkin by going darker, lighter, darker, lighter, darker, lighter, darker, lighter, darker, lighter, and then I blended it with a clean, dry brush. One word of caution is when you are fading it, your paint's going to start, and say I'm brushing it. You're going to brush it with the direction of the pumpkin. So you're going to need to curve it. But one word of caution is you might get picking up too much paint. When that happens, what I do is I just take a clean, dry piece of paper and I'm going to kind of brush off my wet paint so that it stays dry. So you can kind of have a scrap piece of paper and just kind of take it off to when you're blending your paint. I also just grabbed on the tip of it a little bit of white. You see that? And what I did with my white is while my paint was still wet, now your paint has to still be wet. It can be tacky, but it has to still be wet or it won't blend in, and you'll have a white dash on your pumpkin if it's dry. While it's still wet, if you want, you can punch it out a little bit. So I took white paint and I just kind of put it on the center here, and I just blended it in with a clean, dry brush. If you're in class, my plan is to demo this pumpkin live for you, but I still wanted it to be on tape in case you're absent or in case you're not one of my art students face to face and you still want to try to do this pumpkin. So you're going to take this idea of this pumpkin and I want you to go ahead and paint it on your Halloween canvas. It'll start to bring everything all together. What about the trunk of the pumpkin? What you're going to do is go ahead and paint the trunk of the pumpkin using that beige color and just go ahead and outline it. And then while it's still wet, you're not going to rinse off your brush. You'll notice my brush is still brown on it and wet. And I'm going to take the white, and what I'm going to do is just kind of dash it in and go with the husk of my pumpkin. Just kind of play around with keeping it and not over blending it. And you can just kind of allow those mixed values to create that textured look that you will want. Just like that. And that's really all you need to do for the trunk is just outline it, add some white wisp of white, which will automatically turn to a lighter color beige for you. And that'll give you a nice pumpkin husk. You might want to make the top a little bit darker. If you want to add a little bit black to give that more values, you can. But that's really it. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like at the end. And you do you. Just use your own creative, artistic edge. You can change it up and add or take out anything you don't like. It's your painting. And have a great day. So to finish up your pumpkin, I first apologize for that kind of crazy mess up of my filming, but you're going to paint your pumpkin and then you're going to just take black paint and outline it wispily with black, not overly neat. Take a small paintbrush, detailed brush, and grab wet black paint and then just kind of swipe it where you want to highlight it. I did it on my pumpkins, like where my pumpkin line was curving, and it just kind of brought everything out. My last step was I then took white paint and I just kind of dabbed white paint wherever I wanted to as a highlight, just to kind of bring it out. I like the contrast of black against the white. And that is it. Then you have a really cool pumpkin to go hang up. You could give it as a gift to cheer someone up over the Halloween holidays, or you could keep it for yourself for decoration for years to come. All right, have a great spooktacular Halloween.